That's a horrible shot. That's a horrible shot. So I kind of blew through my day today. Jeez Louise. So we've secured a new housemate. He's partially moved in. Part of what I ended up having to do today was we had to remove an old air conditioner that was not working from that room. Yeah, I'm a bit of a mess right now. I took like 3 showers today. So I cleaned out some space in the kitchen, removed an old air conditioner because we tested it. It seized up and had a hornet's nest inside of it. So we had to pull that out of the wall. And apparently whoever built it, they took an air conditioner that you set in the wall and they spackled it into the wall and then sealed it with caulking. And so it was like welded in there. And it's literally on like a half story, like a story and a half above ground. So it's like, it's not the easiest way to reinstall something. So I had to pull that out, put a new one in its place. It's sort of in its place. So that I did a lot of things today that I had to get clean multiple times today after all of that. And part of that was just putting my back out for some of that. So had some issues. Been sort of recuperating since then. So it's really just getting back to working on these ideas. So that's the ramble that I do at the start of the video, I guess. Anyway, the project that we're working on, or supposed to be working on, is for those catching up after the fact, is taking existing pop culture stories. I did this once before. Basically what I did was I would take existing pop culture stories, disassemble them, take their component parts, figure out how to use them to make a new story. So I did it for several. I did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Ghostbusters, Jurassic Park, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Stargate, Terminator, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Blade Runner. And so I came up with these ideas. There's some videos of me brainstorming those previously, early, couple months back. Then set those aside. I had all the documentation of all the things I worked on, and my hard drive blew up. So I had to replace my hard drive. And in replacing the hard drive and rebuilding the computer, we lost all of the data that I had made from this. But my premise has always been a story written by different authors with the same starting points will be different for each of them. So I'm playing the role at this point. I figured like it's a good chance to prove the point. I am both of the authors. I am exploring creating the same story twice creating the story twice from the same building blocks without a lot of memory of what I made before. So I could go back and review what I did once before. But that data, I mean, I can recreate those. I can always go back and check them and just carry those ideas further. But half the fun for me is what new ideas do we get from what we do now? So I haven't decided which one we're going to be working on next. So that's kind of what I'm doing today. So we did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. We did Jurassic Park. And I think I'll just, I didn't make a note in there of what Jurassic Park was. I'll call it Shrink Park or whatever. The first time I think Jurassic Park was We did it as a virtual reality park where the AI escapes by swapping into the body of the player. The second time, we created a way of shrinking people to get down into a model terrarium set with insects. And it became more of a question of what kind of story opportunities does that idea of a miniature technology being able to be used to, or a shrinking technology being used to make a park open up for future storytelling. So playing with that mindset, that was that was a new interesting take on that. We've got at League of Extraordinary Gentlemen we just did. Trying to remember, what was it we did for League? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen we did yesterday. Oh, was taking the time frame of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and flipping it. So League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was written in the 60s or 70s. It might have even been written in the 80s, about the early 1900s, about characters who were from the late 1800s. So you had, like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are characters from the 1800s fantasy science, like science fantasy stories. And that character is sort of the latter days of that character's life. You know, the chance to redeem themselves, reclaim some sort of heroic story for that character, a redemption arc or something like that. And so they took a character like that, plopped them into the early 1900s, and have them be part of a team trying to save the world from the changes that occurred at the early 1900s. And like I said, this is all written in the 60s or 70s, maybe 80s. At the same time, taking the story we went with, we took the reverse of that. If we start with writing right now, instead of going 20 or 30 years back in the past to the time frame of when this new story takes place, we're going to go 20 or 30 years into the future. And it's going to be about characters who play a heroic role 20 or 30 years in the future based off of something that they will become 20 or 30 years further out into the future. And so it has to have a time travel element. So we drag an element of something from the future into the nearer future. Excuse me. But we're writing the story in the present. So, you know, the present, the nearer past, the further out past. So what we're doing is the present, the nearer future, the further out future. And so when you take a character from the distant past, place them as a potential another story element to them, added by making them a superhero team in the near past, and you write it in the present. Doing the reverse is, in the present, you write a story about somebody in the near future with a gaining of the, like, the origin story for their abilities would take place in the far future. So that was a sort of a twist on that. And so both of these are methods of taking a story and twisting something to get something new out of it. God, I'm yawning like crazy. I can't keep this up. Okay, so we have remaining on our list Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Stargate, Terminator, and Blade Runner. Now, just reviewing what we've got here, Buffy the movie and Buffy the TV series are kind of two different inventions. So Buffy the movie is sort of like a, what if a cheerleader was the chosen one who saves the world from a vampire incursion. And it plays up the Valley Girl mall shopper character, and it puts that character in the role of trying to save the world from a vampire invasion. The TV series took that character and made her less of a ditz and made her a real character, a real human being, and asked, what kind of life does this character have as a chosen one, trying to be a teenager while also dealing with the fact that she is required to save the world. It's a very Spider-Man story. It's a ordinary teen given extraordinary powers that not everybody knows exists, and they have to perform the role of a champion. And there's room for telling that story in a couple different ways. I don't know if that's the one I want to play with just yet, or if I want to go to Stargate. I mean, the key factor for Stargate is, I mean, if you have a preference, please leave it in the comments or whatever. But the thing about Stargate was, it pretty much requires that you have a gate to the stars in some fashion. So, premise of Stargate, movie versus TV series. The movie is about a U.S. government-funded program to crack the code on a piece of alien technology, or a mysterious technology seemingly built into a device that belonged to the time frame of ancient Egypt. So they found a buried ring that has mechanical properties in the desert near Egypt, and then they've taken that gate and they've set it inside of a mountain base, and they find that applying power to it enables them to do certain things, and it's like a combination lock. They've been playing with it for a long time, and it needs to be decoded. And so they find a sort of a fringe scientist who has theories about how ancient Egypt was established by the intervention of extraterrestrials or some such thing. And so he's a linguist as well, and he decodes the gate. And with some of that decoding, they find that it is a portal that you can open to another world. So they send a device through, and they see what's on that other side. And when they do that, they are confronted with a alien race with superior technology that confronts and attacks them. And so they have to, part of the plan was Kurt Russell's character, was it? I think. He plays a washed up military person who's brought in to lead the team. And secretly, their goal is to destroy what's on the other side of the gate so nobody can come to Earth. But a whole confrontation and defeating Ra, and that whole thing happens. And then the military guy returns to Earth, and the nerdy scientist guy stays with the humans living on that world. And that's sort of how the movie ends. The TV series picks up where the military guy has returned because the gate was reopened from some other side, and more of the threatening aliens came to Earth and kidnapped people from the base. So they recontact the scientist guy and find out they didn't come from there, so this gate may open to other locations. So they put together a team, they run a rescue team to get the people back. And in the adventure of the rescue, they sort of liberate one of the generals from the forces of the opponent and make him aware of the fact that he's not serving a god, he's serving a pretender of godhood. So they're sort of they're based off of the same story, but they're sort of two different stories. I like the idea of the gateway to multiple locations. But that wasn't what was really kind of pitched in the first movie, and the movie for it. It was really just pitched as a doorway to another world. So you could take either of those approaches if you wanted to go into that as your foundation. Now, where that doorway goes, that's hard to say. That's the key factor. That's the biggest difference you're going to make. Do you do alternate worlds? Is it a doorway through time? Doorways. Doorways to other places. Places or times. Time, space. I mean, I suppose you could do something magical where it's a magical doorway that opens to a realm of magic and spirits or stuff like that. All right, so Terminator. I have no idea what I did for this the last time. I don't. Most of these, the only one I remember really well was, I do remember bits of Buffy. Okay, so Stargate, Terminator. The basic premise of Terminator is that there's time travel. Somebody comes from the future. Two beings come from the future. One to destroy the mother of a person who has a certain value or impact to the future. And the other is sent back to both stop that and to secretly to be the one who enables that future hero to be created. So time travel is a key factor on that one. It overall is a sci-fi time travel story. So if you were to take a story like that, what would you be able to change? What would you be able to give your own spin on? I mean, you could set it up so that there's a little bit of 12 Monkeys going on with my brain right now. So 12 Monkeys is also a shift to the past. But that one's done in multiple jumps. I'm trying to remember what we did with it last time. So, time travel from the future. Like, you couldn't really do a time traveler from the past. You could do a time travel from the present. That way you're getting more butterfly effect. That could be an interesting way to tell a story like that. You know, that may be the way to do that. Instead of doing a story of somebody in the present going to the past, two people going to the past to make a change, what if in the future you have characters who are in the midst of a big struggle, but they do not have something they need to win the struggle? So they dip into the past and pull people forward. That's a possibility. And then I think the last one we have on the list here is Blade Runner. And that is, I vaguely remember doing something with the idea of a guy and his partner, and they don't know if they're both artificial beings. I think it's a sci-fi. I don't remember what I did last time. But the thing that's important for Blade Runner is to have somebody who can pass for human being created as a subservient class. And then some of them rebelling and hiding among people. And the person who's hired to hunt them down. I mean, I suppose you could do that as a fantasy. You could do You could do something along the lines of like a vampire situation or a necromancer. Where they create they used bodies of the dead to create an artificial being by pulling a spirit into it, binding it, and making a slave caste. I think we did something like that last time. I think we actually did 2 stories for it. We did changelings or something like that, right? Doppelgangers or some such thing. But those are the 1, 2, 3, 4 options that we are reimagining this time. So if you have a preference for what we end up doing, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to just pick a random one for next time and see what I can create with it. But, I mean, I've already sort of put the starting steps on a few of those there. I'm going to give it a little time tomorrow. I've got a lot of things I need to do tomorrow. So that might be a little bit of a problem, but I should be able to put some time into coming up with some ideas for these. And tomorrow is Tuesday. So I got another Wednesday and Thursday. I got a busy day at work. Friday and Saturday, I think I have the chance to do some more stuff. But I still got to get my car inspected. I need to get my car registered. And what's the... Oh, we got to do our taxes before July 15th, too. So I got to work on those things. That's my list right now of the things we have to do in the meantime. So I will play with some of these ideas. I guess the title for tomorrow will be one of these titles. Buffy, Stargate, Terminator, Blade Runner. Oh, which do we play with next? And then we'll just play with what we got. I guess that's really all I got for tonight. I don't got a lot to go with. So I'm going to say so long, farewell, take care, and have a good night.